All right, well, it looks like it's just us today. No problem. We can go ahead and get started. Since we do have a pretty small group today, go ahead and feel free to introduce yourselves. I can get started. So my name is Jaya Lala, and I am the Senior Global Education Manager of the Global Classrooms DC program here at UNA-NCA. I joined the program last fall in September of 2019 as a program assistant and have since then come to manage the program since June 2020. But yeah, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Ben Frizzell. I'm an instructional coach at the Inspired Teaching Demonstration School. A few years ago, our school participated in Model UN, and we're thinking about getting back into it. So I just want to get some more info for our teachers and figure out how it might work.
And I'm John Segan. I'm a teacher in Houston, and I've been teaching Model UN for several years, and am interested in partnering more with different schools in the DC area.
Excellent. Well, great to hear. So just to run through our agenda today, we're going to go through a little bit more about Model UN, what is Model UN, kind of the basics of the program as a whole, and then kind of go into what Global Classrooms does with Model UN, and then you'll have an opportunity for questions. We're going to start today just with a little bit of trivia. Since there are just a couple of us today, we can just go ahead and keep it in the main room. So we'll kind of just go through each question. I'll give you guys a minute to think about each question and then put your answers, or you can send them to me privately in the chat. So the questions are there. How many Sustainable Development Goals are there? When was the UN formed? And then how many member states are in the United Nations? So go ahead and think about it and then message your answers to me privately.
Jaya, do you know you're muted?
Oh, thank you for that. But yeah, going through all of the answers of each question. First one is how many Sustainable Development Goals are there? There are 17. So John, great job. You got that one. Ben, fortunately, there's 10 more than you guessed. But can anyone name 2 SDGs?
Clean air and clean water?
Do you know which number that is?
No, God, no.
No worries. Anyone else want to try?
No.
Okay, no worries. So I'll just name some of my favorite SDGs. So SDG number 4 is quality education, and then SDG 16 is peace, justice, and strong institutions. The reason I bring this up is Global Classrooms as a program, we really focus our program around the Sustainable Development Goals. We teach our students about the Sustainable Development Goals through learning about global issues. So they're very important to learning about the world and all the issues that they're going to be tackled. Next question is, when was the UN formed? So that is in 1945, post-World War II. So again, John, great job. And then our last question is, how many member states are in the United Nations? Unfortunately, neither of you got this, John. You were very close, but there are 193 countries in the United Nations. Awesome. So just thank you for participating in that trivia. Just moving on to talking about a little bit more about what is Model UN, and I'm going to pose you guys kind of with an open-ended question of what is the United Nations? So feel free to unmute and share a little bit about what you know about the UN.
I would say the UN is a a supranational organization where countries come together to address a variety of different global issues in a variety of different smaller organizations within the umbrella of the United Nations.
Mhm. And Ben, would you like to add anything onto that?
I think you nailed it, yeah.
Awesome. So basically the United Nations is, like you said, an international institution that advocates for global peace, global justice, all of those things kind of related to that nature. Kind of what Model UN that does then is simulates what the United Nations actually does. So students play the role of UN ambassadors and delegates in different committees within the United Nations. And I'll give some examples of that kind of moving forward. So in each kind of Model UN debate or simulation, students are able to represent a country's interests and their goals, and also come up with policy positions on a global issue based on the information that they have on what the country has currently done or what it's planning to do. At these Model UN conferences, students come together to debate their positions and work with other delegates to develop solutions. So compared to kind of a debate team or a debate conference, Model UN really encourages students to work together to find solutions to international issues. And so some examples of what those issues might be, students could be in a World Health Organization committee trying to combat the issue of managing global infectious disease outbreaks. So for example, in the time of COVID, students could be faced with coming together to combat a COVID outbreak or an Ebola outbreak and really figuring out how their countries can come together to solve an international issue. Same thing for UN Environment Program or UN Human Rights Council. There are just so many options and so many issues that students can take on. And in each kind of committee, students are able to represent different countries. So it really encourages them to take on that global perspective and understand what different countries are thinking about these issues and how they can kind of come together and form some kind of international solution or what's known as a resolution. So kind of just going a little bit more into how Model UN is a little bit different from debate. I will be sending the slide deck afterwards, so I'm not going to read off of it for you, but some things that I just did want to highlight is that Model UN really focuses on the collaboration aspect versus the competition aspect. There's no really right answer to solving a global issue, so students are really confronted with thinking about how to take every state actor's interests into account while also trying to act as a representative of their own country and the people of that country as well. And it really, like I said before, encourages perspective taking. Through research, students are able to understand, what different countries are thinking about specific issues. So for example, personally, they might have one view on human rights, that human rights should be granted for everyone, but being a different country where that culture system might be different or where rights aren't even inclusive for everyone, it really forces them to think about how the United Nations should act, how they need to really, as this country, come together and work together for the encouragement of human rights. Before I move on to kind of the Global Classrooms program and what we do with Model UN, do you guys have any questions? All right, seeing none, we can just move right along. What the Global Classrooms program does basically then is we use Model UN as a tool to teach students to become global citizens. And that really goes along with the fact that we are part of the United Nations Association of the National Capital Area. So the program has been in effect since about 2003. Our main area that we focus on is DC, Maryland, and Virginia for public schools, public charter schools, private schools, home schools. But that's really expanded over the past couple of years. We've worked with schools across the nation, including Florida and California, and even across the world with students from Lebanon and China and the Cayman Islands. And with that, we also work with a lot of agencies within the DC area. So we work with the US Department of State to host our spring Model UN conference, we get the expertise of UN agencies and organizations as we're building up our materials, as well as their expertise in the conference and in-house as policy advisors. And we also work with, different local universities to recruit volunteers. So we really try to encompass all the tools and resources that we have within the DC area to bring them to the program. Just a little bit more about what we provide as a program and what signing up could provide your school or your group. So as part of our year-round community program, we provide a curriculum of 8 units, which includes a educator's workbook, a student workbook, and mini Model UN simulations for for each unit. It'll range from 1 to 2 per unit. So you really have a chance to get a real feel for what a Model UN committee might be like. There are absolutely no prep simulations, so there's no background research required. Students really can just take the country placards and debate the topic at hand kind of with those. We also host 2 conferences during the school year. One is our Fall Model UN Training Conference in association with the Pan American Health Organization, and the other one is our Spring Model UN Conference. I'll touch on a little bit of how we are adapting to COVID and how we are planning on moving forward with the curriculum and the conferences as well a little bit later in the session. Signing up for the GCDC program also provides your group or your school with different Model UN workshops. We're planning different virtual presentations and webinars with our UN agencies. We can bring guest speakers to your classroom, as well as conduct any kind of presentations that you might be interested in. We also provide professional development for our educators. We're currently working on ways to provide kind of the global perspective on the educator side and for you to really get a feel for what being a Model UN delegate might be. And obviously there's a lot more to that as well. Just going into kind of how our community has responded before I really get into what our response is with COVID and how our program is going to be adjusted. So we've had a fairly positive response for the program. All this data has been collected from the past school year, even with the interruption of the pandemic. So we really saw a lot of students feeling more confident about sharing their opinions, feeling more confident in public speaking, and really honing in on those skills that we want them to become engaged global citizens. Before I get to this, does anyone have any questions about the program overall? All right, great. So before I show this video to you, this is kind of a snippet of how we're going about virtual Model UN sessions. I did want to show you all a little bit of what we've been creating in terms of curriculum to adapt to your classroom for distance learning if it is required. So basically, what we've done is we've been spending the past couple of months updating our curriculum so that it is all ready to go for registration on Monday, but we've included a lot of different options like fillable text fields where students are able to just directly type on to the documents themselves compared to previous years where educators would have to physically print them out and the students would have to handwrite on them, as well as included a lot of guidance within the curriculum itself as an educator for how to even simulate these activities in a distance learning setting. So you'll see right here, we've added some guidance here for creating a KWL chart when you're in the classroom virtually. So using a Google Doc or allowing students to fill in their responses on the Google Doc as compared to using a whiteboard or a chalkboard as they would in the classroom. We've also, as part of this initiative, created a guide on how to conduct Model UN simulations online. So as part of that mini simulation component for the curriculum itself, we've tried to really lighten the load and create an easy lift for you to employ the program itself. So it's more of just you reading through it and understanding just what you have to do rather than trying to figure out how the program would be adapted or how it's even going to be employed despite the virtual setting. Yes, go ahead.
Did you do the mini simulations last year?
Yeah, so mini simulations are something we have included in the curriculum every single year, but we've never really had to confront them being online before, so that's why we've created this guide. And there's a very baseline introduction of what a mini simulation is, and how to conduct it even in an in-person classroom as well.
And about how many students do you generally have participate in them?
So the mini simulations as a whole are typically just in classroom components. So educators will be employing them as they see fit within the classroom, especially in preparation for Model UN conferences. But something that our program is doing in this adaptation to COVID as well is using these mini simulations to conduct virtual Model UN sessions every month. So really pairing it with what's already there in the curriculum, and then really, again, lightening the load for the educators and creating an easy lift to just have these mini simulations conducted online. But moving on into kind of what these virtual sessions will look like. This summer, we had the privilege of working with a couple of schools in response to the cancellation of our Spring 2020 conference to conduct different virtual Model UN sessions. So this is kind of just a snippet of what that looks like.
As the IOM, we must make sure that we can eliminate forced migration, therefore giving people better lives.
In different parts of the world have to deal with way worse situations, such as Mexico stated, war. They have to deal with their homes being destructed, and they also have to deal with extreme weather conditions.
There are many different ways to solve the issue of forced migration due to conflict, but Jordan believes that the best one is creating a safer, open routes so that more refugees and migrants can access sanctuaries.
The delegation of South Korea believes that the best way to help many migrants is to improve immigration policies and processes.
The delegation of Mexico agrees with all other delegates that have said we need to get funding from higher GDP countries, and this is due to the fact that they are not just giving money to developing countries, but it's a bonus for them, because if they invest in these countries, then there will be less migrants trying to enter their countries.
As the delegates of South Korea and Sweden stated, our bloc developed a working paper based on improving the lives of refugees when they're living in their camps. We are creating plans to improve their livelihood from what they currently have, which isn't much.
So during our UNMOD, my blog concerning how we can improve the infrastructure has talked about not only the U.S. providing aid in terms of specific aspects of required infrastructures, similar to how we have different departments.
So when we were talking about building infrastructure, we also wanted to sort of spread the population out to avoid things like overpopulation and a lack of resources.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
And I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
So that was just a very brief snippet of kind of how these virtual sessions were conducted over summer. As you can see, a lot of the students were still engaged in the issue despite the fact that things were online. Like I mentioned in that mini simulation guide, it's really a thing of, figuring out how to translate these sessions to a virtual space, whether that's using raise hand functions, breakout rooms, things of that nature, which is why we've decided to conduct these virtual or these monthly virtual Model UN sessions to really make it easy for the educators to be able to, create proficient Model UN delegates. Some other things I did want to mention, especially with this school year and other things that we've employed to adapt our program and our curriculum for the pandemic. So as I mentioned, creating a hybrid curriculum that's able to be used both in the classroom as well as online. We've also created something that we're calling a pen pal program. It's basically a separate kind of blog discussion forum that is only going to be accessed by students, where they can kind of engage with each other and talk about different issues that they're learning with, rather than only talking about these things with the students in their classroom. It's something where we're going to be posting monthly or weekly questions, and students can kind of engage with it as they will. And then we'll also be hosting a couple of virtual presentations from professionals and academics in the international affairs field, really honing in on the fact that we have this expertise available, everyone's at home. They're really willing and able to kind of engage with our students in a capacity that we haven't been able to before.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Those monthly sessions, are those live or recorded or?
Right, so they will be live. We're currently trying to hear from our network about what, times of the month, times of day, time of, the week is gonna work best. So signing up for the GCDC program, we'll really wanna hear your opinion of when these virtual sessions will be conducted. But in addition, if students aren't able to attend these sessions, we're definitely willing to have separate school sessions as well.
I had a question as well about the Pen Pal program. Is that more of kind of a discussion board? Would students have a specific partner they would be writing to?
Right. So I will just show you kind of what that looks like. Just give me 1 second to pull it up. Okay. So basically, we've created kind of this discussion board, and as I said, we'll be posting different questions each week. Basically, as we're piloting this program, is we really want to see how students are engaging in the beginning, really giving them the opportunity to start talking with each other. And then if we see, specific students engaging with each other more, or if they kind of indicate some kind of interest of collaborating with one student specifically, we're going to be, pairing them up either in these virtual Model UN sessions to where they can represent a double delegation, or even something of where, now that we're in this virtual space in our Model UN conferences, they'll be able to work together at the conferences and represent a double delegation. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Great, and I see, Denise, that you joined us. If you want to just quickly introduce yourself.
I'm a former State Department employee, and I just wanted to know what this was about. So that's why I'm listening to it and getting a sense of how I can participate or not. Thank you.
Excellent. Great. And Mary Ruth, I also see that you've been able to join us. If you want to introduce yourself as well.
Sure. Hey, I am Mary Ruth Prieb, and I am a graduate student. What information do you want to know?
Oh, just brief introduction of either your interest in Model UN or why you're interested in the program.
Yes, so I'm an international relations student, and I'm interested in Model UN. This is not something I did growing up, so I'm interested in any information about it.
Excellent. Great. All right. So just moving along, kind of in this kind of brief introduction, I did want to kind of end with more of a why GCDC program, kind of more of a personal backstory. Model UN was something I went through in high school. It was really formative in my interest in international affairs and pursuing an international affairs degree through my undergraduate experience, and really giving me a capacity for becoming a global citizen and becoming aware of what was going on in the world. And now it's kind of my turn to give that impact on our generation of tomorrow. As you can see here, I've listed a couple of testimonials from our students and our teachers that have participated in the program. But I really think kind of using the fact that, we are in DC, we have this UN expertise available, as well as, the resources to go to the Pan American Health Organization or the State Department and really engage with people who are working on these issues in real time and give students that tangible feel for the issues that they're learning about in the classroom really makes the program itself worthwhile. So Denise and Mary Ruth, I know you you kind of joined us a little bit late, but I'm happy to answer any more questions or go through a little bit more about the program and Model UN if you'd like me to.
Well, I mean, I'd love you to, but I don't necessarily want to take up time from other things that you want to get to.
Yeah, of course. This is basically kind of the end of the presentation. So first, I guess I'll turn it over to John and Ben. If you guys have any questions before I end up repeating myself on anything that you've heard.
Yeah, I just have questions. If our school was to do it, do you have like a recommended number of kids, number of minutes per week, things like that?
Mm-hmm. So within our 8-unit curriculum, we have, each unit has 3 lessons each, and each lesson takes about 45 minutes. So typically we'll have either Model UN groups engage in hour sessions for a week. The program itself is meant to last for the entire year, so it's not something of where like you need to try to finish a unit per week. And what we've really seen with kind of the educators we've worked with as well is the way our curriculum is designed is it's a very kind of pick and choose model. So it's not something of where you need to go through every single activity for every single unit, but really just figuring out what works best for your classroom. And then there's a second part to your question and I'm forgetting what you said.
Is there like a number of kids that it works with, or?
Mm-hmm. So we've worked with groups as little as 2 to 3 kids, with our homeschooled groups as large as 30 kids. So it really just, it depends on the interest. There's no really set number, but I would recommend kind of a group of at least 3 to 4 students to start with, just so students are able to kind of engage with each other and think about these global issues with each other rather than kind of just getting one kind of perspective.
And then the youngest age is at 6th grade or?
5th grade.
5th grade, okay.
Yeah. Any other questions from Ben and John? Oh, go ahead.
And just to kind of piggyback off of that, when I do these discussions, I think 20 is a good number of kids to have in a room discussing one thing. If you get much higher than that to begin with, kids are too shy to speak. If it's too many fewer than that, then